sitar,
Right.
Yeah, when this guy I'm trying to think of played those tablas or something like that, drums.
See the countdown. So, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, the Board of Library Trustees, welcome to anybody who might be with us from public remotely, if that's happening. We will start with a roll call if we could.
Let's see here. Do we have our wonderful chair, Diane DeWillian?
Present.
Awesome. Do we have our vice chair, Bob Petty?
Right here.
Perfect. All right, let's see. Do we have Harash Joshi? Okay. We've got Martin Morales.
Here.
Perfect. And then awesome.
Here.
And a little reminder to anybody that does join in the Zoom, if you would like to have any questions or comments, please raise your little hand.
Okay, thank you very much, Julia. We will get going with presentations. First, we will receive an update on the library interns' work on public art policy.
Yeah, and actually Ariana should be joining us shortly. I'll go ahead and jump in.
Do we want
Said she?
to rearrange? To wait for her or?
Yeah, sure. I can at least start with it and she
Okay.
can jump in. I
Okay,
told her,
thank
I mean, we're just-
And she could sit right here when she gets here.
Yeah. So Ariana is our Middlebury intern, was brought in as a federal work study program through Middlebury College. We were working on this in their project base. And so we started off with the project looking at was work on a public art policy. This is primarily something through the Museums Cultural Arts Commission. We do have a policy right now for accepting the accessioning museums and cultural arts collection. So the art that we have that is city owned, that's all part of our museum's collection. So that is something that we've had for some time. So we do have the Museums Cultural Arts Commission and that policy. But we were looking at a public art policy for how do people apply for generally art that's owned by the private in public view. So it's private art in public spaces, as well as public art would essentially be nonprofits or other organizations that are on there.
You're saying if I painted something, what would I do to get it displayed?
Exactly.
Okay.
So right now you would do it primarily through a sign permit.
Oh,
Okay.
So theirs would be
it
like,
seems a little
fine. So most businesses, if they're doing a update to a historic property, there is a historic preservation commission, HPC, and they would go through historic structure like change. So any change with that. So we're looking at continuing with that is through HPC, is continuing through like historic preservation commission, and anything for sure. And the other ones would be, so if there's a sculpture or something like that, they still have to go through all of their business license requirements and everything like that.
Now, this rigmarole doesn't apply to if we, or the library, wanted to display any images that we own in the California History Room, for example.
That's inside.
That.
Right,
Right.
this would be if we put a mural on the outside of the building.
It also only applies to outside of buildings, not inside?
Well, inside the building is not updated to like viewable outside. So that's where, like, for example,
Uh-huh,
the banners that are on the outside of the building,
yeah,
those were done actually through Architectural Review
right,
Commission.
I remember.
And so that is something that has to go through, essentially, those are signage guidelines. The ARC has, Architectural Review Commission has been disbanded.
Yeah,
There's now the Planning Commission. So this was to say that what is art? So we're defining essentially what is art, what is private art, those kind of definitions, as well as not just murals, but sculptures or anything like that it has to do. So the public art, this is something that I think can be confusing right now for people in the private sector to identify when they are coming to, how do I get a mural on my property? And it's different between going into cities like Seaside, Sand City, Monterey, Salinas. Every single city has a different policy and a procedure for how you're going to do it. Cities like Sand City have a kind of a general neighborhood guideline in
Yeah.
area where they have a development area where they encourage public art. So that's where that comes into play. Different commissions, different communities have different, whether that's recreation commission or, you know, different areas for how do you actually apply for that. We do have a similar, like a utility box art program that only applies to utility boxes owned by the city of Monterey. So our utility box art program is only basically traffic boxes, and that is identified.
But those are still reviewed before they're.
They're
approved.
still reviewed and there's approval process for that. So we are looking at this as not including something like utility boxes, because utility boxes are something we already have a policy for.
But it would include something like the Mike Sovereign mural upstairs.
Right. Most,
Because it's
well,
on
we
the
have,
outer wall of the library.
we have to figure out with that too, what is considered like on what
What's
side for the
outside.
zoning. Because there are people that have recessed areas. So another one is like an example is the back of like Golden State Theater, which has a mural on the
Yeah,
back of the
yeah.
Golden State Theater, and that has been done. Is that a mural or is that a sign? So we have to identify on these kind of things, what is what. The Andronico's building has that was done as a sign permit. It's the Otters, and then it says Andronico's. That says Andronico's, right? So what is there? So different buildings have that. So it's been a lot of research in terms of what do cities do all throughout California for this type of a project? Like, how do they apply for
I
it?
see how this is a city issue and you need some protocols. But how does it, where's the library fit into it? Unless somebody wants to put something at the library. Why is the library involved at all in general? I mean,
This is through, as I was mentioning earlier on, this is through the Museums and Cultural Arts Commission.
oh,
So I'm giving an update basically because she is hired as
I
a
see.
library and museums intern through federal work study.
I see.
So that's where initially that would be updating the code so that the code for Museums Commission and the code for how do you apply for this type of a project was clearly state, so that people would know, how do I apply to put a mural in on my building in here in Monterey, and then also identify areas where it's permitted.
So you have both process and policy. Does this include looking at the content and having guidelines for the content, or is this just the process of applying that you're?
That's a great question and something we've talked about quite a bit, because there are neighborhood specific guidelines in Monterey. So for example, there's like business areas. So if you're in the North Fremont district, or if you're in the downtown district or the Old Town district or the New Monterey district, what is the actual kind of these kind of development districts, you know, that are in there? And they often have specific area plan information based on the general plan. So the general plan identifies areas, and they may say, we want public art. And I believe the downtown or Old Town says the artwork is encouraged, but it should be reflective of
The environment.
the environment in the
So
neighborhood.
if you wanted to paint a large naked lady on your building, somebody might say, well, that's not.
It's, you have to figure, I mean, that's one of the things we have to run this past legal. Because one of the things is about free speech and signs and artwork, and what can you basically allow and not allow is in there. So we have to get some very clear guidelines. Now, if it's something that we pay for, or I mean, as in the city, as the city pays for it, the city installs it, yes, we have the ability for us to review and do all of that work. I get the question we have right now that we need to identify is, what constraints are in there currently within a neighborhood specific plan
Right,
that says, like, in this neighborhood, we want this type of art.
so we need cross into the private sector or commercial,
Exactly,
that's,
Hmm.
this is going to be for their use.
right, yeah. So
Hi,
just,
welcome.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so-
guess NCIP gets involved too, because I remember when I was on that committee, when it was just called NIP, we didn't have a C. A number of the projects were to put up attractive signs as you entered a neighborhood. And I would assume all of what you were just saying would apply to that as well, because I mean, it's a sign and it says, welcome to Fish Flats, let's say.
Mhm.
But they would put some decoration on it, and I don't know what they would, but trees or flowers or leaves or animals or whatever. But I would think that would be subject to similar procedures.
well, that would be done because it's a sign and not public art. That would be considered most likely the sign permit, and it would go through planning department.
So if it has letters, if it has a message on it, if it has words on it, then it's a sign, is that?
Not exactly. So
There's
currently,
nuances.
so there's nuances because the sign policy currently states like interpretive with or without
Words.
words.
I see.
And so that's where we have to go through and get more kind of legal guidance of whether the sign has to be changed as well, because we want to go have forward where the applicant knows, am I applying for a sign permit? Am I applying for a,
So that's
A
what this
mural permit.
policy will solve.
right?
And
That's
that's
one of
where
those.
your example of Andronicus, because that was a little fuzzy. Is it art or is it their
Right,
sign?
so it's, because it's otters there, now the otters without the Andronicos, is it a mural? Right, but if a place was, like otters with grocery bags, something like that, then you're more apt to say that's
That's not-
sign.
Well, I can think of artful signage too. I mean, somebody puts up a sign, but they say, everybody's gonna ignore that because it's just block letters. I need to put some pretty flowers or otters or something on the piece.
Yeah,
And then it's straddling two fences, I think.
and I will say, so the part with like the NCIP, NIP, where that comes into play
Yeah.
is often, that's a request for funding, but they're not in charge of choosing the art. They're often in
Right.
saying like, we want a project at this underpass, we want a project here. The overall signage approval, the overall mural approval, the art approval goes through, the art acquisition by city code is over through Museums and Cultural Arts Commission, because that's the group that has ultimate authority to recommend something to go forward to council. So there's kind of on that. The NCIP is the funding source that says, we want to do a mural. This is an example, but that's not the final approval
Not
for
their
that project.
purview.
That
Right.
project still has to go through through engineering back into it, and then into the city scope, and then they do that. So some of those, like I believe there's a sign that was on one of the proposals this year. There was a sign that was on one proposals for NCIP. And I think it was right over by like Casa Moonras,
Oh.
something like that, like coming in,
Oh,
right when
right,
coming out
at that-
Fremont,
At that fork.
at that
right.
fork right there. I thought that there was a sign. I don't know. I don't think that one went through, but I
For the
remember.
restaurant or the
No,
hotel
for the
there?
dis-
No,
District.
for entering Monterey.
Oh,
Entering
lucky you,
Old
you're
Monterey.
in Monterey.
Yeah, so it's kind of like somebody had like a district, there was like a district sign, like downtown, or, something
Yeah, yeah.
like
One
that.
of those neighborhood signs.
But it wasn't, I don't think that was approved, but that's the example of, we have a pretty similar kind of those neighborhood signs that they've done throughout. But with that, yes, I was just to say that also, Ariana and I have done a number of interviews with artists or, the community development department, and we're still trying to hammer down a interview with the the Monterey County Arts Council, their director. But we've been in touch with different people, just trying to have conversations with working artists, because also, and just saying, what are you running into? And like, what's like to work directly with the Arts Council and people that help fund projects, but then also work with other people that say, hey, this is a barrier for us to find out how to do a project. And that's going to help us
Yeah.
to find out how to do the policy.
Yeah, and because the purpose of the policy is hopefully just to make art accessible on every level for the artists, for administrators, And we've been so fortunate, like Brian was saying, to have conversations with different people throughout the community who have a wide range of experiences, both on the administration level and on the creation level. And so, and even in other cities, we've heard people with experience in King City, Seaside, all throughout California, Los Angeles, we had a conversation about as well. And so we've been able to pinpoint what other cities are doing as well, what, you know, our strengths and limitations are as a city, and how to create the policy within that to provide applicants with the information that they need to create art and to make the city more vibrant as the ultimate goal.
And on the back end, you'll have to figure out how to get that word out to.
Yeah.
You don't want artists.
Producers, yeah.
Yeah, coming up with something and then finding out that the whole thing blows up and they have to start over. So they need to be educated on it.
I feel like it's kind of like if you want to make a sign, but don't make it look too good, because then it's art.
Well, and that's been the tricky part, right? Is
Yeah,
distinguishing between the two,
Exactly,
and we're
exactly.
still having ongoing conversations about that. Is because if us as the people who are authoring the document really are in and trying to understand the different nuances, we really want to find a clear way to communicate that to the public so that they understand, is what I'm putting forth as an applicant art, or is what I'm putting forth a sign? And not only providing them that with that information, but providing them with further areas to look for different details.
And
around
that's
the
not
process.
unique. Every city that has a policy would have that same line to draw, right?
Right. The only difference is a lot of other cities have art under one department. So we were talking about with Brian how oftentimes art is under community development and planning. They work together. Or a lot of different cities have cultural affairs departments.
Yeah.
And so art falls under that. But the city of Monterey is unique where, you know, we kind of have that in a separate level, but we still have a connection to all of these different departments. So we can still tie them in. It's just about connecting it for the public so that that information is accessible and they understand all those different moving pieces. So,
You know, I asked, well, what does the library have to do with all this? But I was just thinking that, you know, consistent with something we discussed with Brian when you were just applying for the job about making the library kind of a community hub for lots of things. If the library could be seen as the hub of the wheel for the use of art throughout the city in public places, I think that would be a real boon to the library status, if nothing else. And, you know, people who like to see that may even be more inclined to donate. I don't know, but, you know, they probably wouldn't cancel their donations. They would. And the other thing I was thinking too is I don't fall in this category, but if I were artistically creative at all, that, and maybe all these people who might want to participate are more visual than I am in that regard. And so if we had something to give them saying, okay, this is clearly a sign, this is clearly art. Do you feel like you fall clearly over here or over here? And if you're in the middle, then we need to talk about it. And, you know, figure out, you were pointing out the need for a distinction. And I think there might be some gray area in the minds of the artists or the sign makers. Because there's nothing wrong with having a sign. And the purpose is just to inform somebody where they are, where they're going, what they're looking at. But there's nothing wrong with having it be artistic, I don't think, you know, pretty to look at, even if I don't read the letters.
Well, it's just, there is a lot of nuance to it, especially like in community development. There are a lot of very specific guidelines into signs. There's a lot of signs, right? So signs have a very big thing on it. So that is also so like if you were to put on a mural and that's your entire building, but then you're not allowed to do a sign that's the size of your entire building. That's something that's very, that we have to navigate, because then but there's not very clear, because if the artwork can be, is it something where the artwork is interpreted as that's what your business does? It doesn't matter if it's, we don't get to choose what's good art or bad art either.
Right.
You know, because that's the thing is art, how good art is subjective to people. So that's where we're going to be. But just to say that we are working on this draft and we'll send it over to legal, discuss with the Museums and Cultural Arts Commission as well about it. But that's been Ariana's been working on that. Do you want to speak on anything else you've been working on here during your time here?
Yes, so I've been very fortunate to work on the public art policy, which as a dancer, an ex-dancer and an artist, it's been my privilege.
Oh.
I'm learning a lot. So thank you guys for giving me that learning opportunity, and for Brian and Melissa for all their help. It's been really enlightening. I've enjoyed it. But we're also working on and beginning to do research into strategic planning. That's been a really fun process. I love organizational development and leadership, and so really diving into that, and again learning from Brian and Melissa who have experience in that area has been amazing. So we're kind of in the beginning phases of that, but
We're excited to see that get rolling
Yeah.
too.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
this has been a really good experience for you.
yeah,
I mean, to
I'm
be, right, and you're in some really very important areas and with a lot of nuance and research and yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to
Sounds
be
like
you right now.
A busy summer.
Yeah.
a busy summer, but I like staying busy. I mean, everybody here is truly amazing. I'm learning a lot, and just being in the environment and interacting with people and having the opportunities for community outreach as well. I love getting public input on what we're working on or what the community feels is relevant to. And so I'm excited to see how all of those different areas combine and how it'll eventually impact the community, because that's
Well,
what it's
we're
all
lucky
for.
to have you.
Yeah.
Thank
Well, I
you.
hope all this helps and supports whatever plans you're making for a graduate degree.
Oh, well, I technically graduated. Technically, not technically.
Oh,
I have to do my final project and submit that to the school, but I officially walked in May. So
for which is that? Which degree?
it's global governance and policy, and then I specialized in public and nonprofit administration.
Is that a master's level degree?
Yes.
Do they offer one beyond that here?
Like Middlebury?
Like a PhD? Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm sure. I think I need to take a moment before I dive into the PhD.
I mean, this is their last, this was their last class as Middlebury.
Oh,
So
right,
this is
yeah.
Yeah.
When they're going to be, if the SoCA University goes through, it's going to be the Monterey Institute.
At
Yeah.
SoCA, yeah. So it'll
Yeah.
change.
So
But, well, I mean, there are,
Grant PhD.
I don't
Oh,
know.
Middlebury doesn't grant PhDs,
Oh,
just
okay.
masters.
So you'd have to go to another school.
Yeah, but I
Another
don't know if that's in the
location.
cards for me.
What's your timeline for trying to get all this done? Or is it just do as much as you can until you're done?
Yeah, I mean, I have a plan. I have plan A, B, and C. And so I would like to aim for the strategic planning at the very least. We haven't talked about it in too much depth, but I would really love to develop a framework, or at the very least an assessment for that process to begin. So creating a plan for that to be implemented. Obviously that'll change based on our research and the information that we start to gather, but we really want that to be evidence-based. So whatever the evidence says, whatever the research suggests, we really want to tailor that to what the community needs and what has worked best in the past. And the policy, we do have a draft. We really just want to get legal's input and make sure that that will be something, when it is put forth, that doesn't need a lot of adjustment, something that's generalizable and sustainable. So I hope that the policy will be formalized by the end of my time. But if not, we've worked as a team, and Brian is fully aware of the policy, Melissa's fully aware of the policy, and so that'll be something that can continue even if I'm removed from the
And
project.
it's almost ready to pass to other departments. So
Yes.
your actual time will be mostly spent on the strategic planning piece after that gets sent off to legal or
Right.
other.
Yeah, for the policy, we're just doing a lot of follow-up meetings, creating small minor changes with legal, hopefully, and the idea is more finalizing and refining.
Right.
And so hopefully, I mean, just it depends on the information that we get back, but hopefully soon. I would like to finish at least one piece before I
Yeah.
have to step away from the project.
Yeah. Do you know how long you're here? Or is that still?
No, she knows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 I don't mean to be nosy.
No, you're fine. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
If you want, I mean, go for it.
Yeah, I'm here until August 15th. kind of grieving leaving already. I feel like the time has gone by really fast, but I'm still available to work on the project or even just talk about it after the fact. So
Yeah, it's been great having her here for sure. So it's been a really big, it's nice to have somebody who can kind of dedicate more time on the research process of things, which is usually something, you know, we rush through because there's
Getting in
just
the
so many,
weeds.
yeah, and exactly. And there's just so many other day-to-day things in front of you. So it's nice having someone who can dedicate time and really dive in. And, you know, because she was just in school, like she still had that research brain that was like very fresh. So yeah, it's been really nice having Ariana.
Thank you very much.
thank you guys. I'm
Yeah.
excited to be able to present something to you at the end of everything.
Any public comments? Julia, do you want to read anything about how to make a public comment?
Yes.
Comment, and this will be on the presentation number 1 on receiving update on library intern and public art policy.
Yes, this one.
Right, so yeah, so just to say, if at any time anyone has a public comment regarding this item on the agenda, please raise your Zoom hand. And I don't think anybody is on there. No one has raised their Zoom hand.
Yeah, I think Julie already talked about raising
Yeah.
her little hand.
I mentioned a little note about raising.
It's always yellow, isn't it?
Yeah, it usually comes up as like a little yellow. On the Zoom call.
Okay, then without that, we would be ready to move on to presentation number 2, which is the discussion of the MC Gibbs project
Yeah,
ideas.
yeah.
And I did want to preface right now that the Board of Library Trustees has no, this is not our baby. It's the Friends and Foundation that run this, but they do listen to advice and counsel and opinions we may have. And so we did want to put it on here to at least discuss in this room.
Yeah, and so just to start with that, you'll see in the report, last year was our largest year. We didn't have a early match and giving was very strong, but I just want to point out also, we didn't send out a number of donor letters last year, the same level as we have in the past, so that could have also increased that we were doing, people were donating through MC Gives. But we did have a letter, some of you guys may have seen our donor letter went out today. So happy to see that go through. But this one, just to point out, so $98,301.03 is what we got for general operations last year. So last year, the Monterey Public Library Friends and Foundation wanted to go with general support, general operating support. And this is, every year you have to apply for this. There's not a standard that you are automatically in as a nonprofit. All nonprofits have to apply to participate again in the MC Gives campaign every year. So with that, also there was a percentage of that. So you'll see on the report also, so $12,686 of that $98,000 was actually the pro rata match, where a number of different individuals, different donors and foundations actually donate towards MC Gives as a whole. And they donate to all of the organizations up to their first $75,000. They'll donate a percentage. So depending on how many organizations reach that, that's why the number changes every year of how much we get on that percentage match. So that's to say that, roughly you're looking at about $85,000 raised by Friends and Foundation through that, and then, $12,600 through our match. With that, we put out usually an advertisement in the MC Weekly, because they put on like a description of the different programs, and we generally work with the Friends and Foundation to put on an advertisement every year to advertise the program that we are doing for there. But we're looking at bringing this forward here today because we'll be meeting with the Friends and Foundation at their quarterly meeting, but also the deadline for the MC Gives application is at the end of July. The application is not posted yet, so we don't know exactly if there's any differences on the application this year. But we're just looking at, we've raised during my time here anywhere from about 65, 70,000 up to here to 98,000. So what kind of a single project, if we had a big idea or project, what do we want to do here in the library? That's single project, something that we could support, something that should not be part of essentially the general operating budget. So that's one of the things for MC Gives is they don't want you to say, we're gonna defer like our general operating budget and then have you do it through MC Gives. So this is a lot of times newer services or ideas or programs of support and wanted to open it up.
Can it be structural? Are you saying that's not?
I don't think they do allow
I-
capital.
Right,
They
I
don't
don't think so.
fund bricks and mortar.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, they want it to be programs
What-
or,
You do presumably have NCIP money for that.
right, so we have some NCIP for some of the ADA work and things,
They
And-
fund programs.
programs and things. What the two areas that I would think of off the bat would be, number one, would be upgrading the teen area. And that's something, as we talked about with Andrea as well, like when Andrea did her presentation last month regarding it, was the need from the teens to have a space that was for them. And that is stuff where it's not truly structural, but you are working on moving out the computer areas. That could be new shelving, it's new seating. It's something that helps define that area for the teens, and then that gives a really defined space to me. I feel like that would be a very strong candidate because I feel that people would identify with where their money goes because they would walk in and see that change and also identify the teens, and we could get quotes
right,
because you want a quote from people that are going to be impacted. And I feel like that's something that we could potentially get. The other
Yeah.
one,
sorry. Donors love that, but also MC Gives is very supportive of anything supporting youth. And they do love that, and a few years ago, we did do the children's area as our MC Gives project, and so I think the teen area would be popular with donors and with community foundation.
yeah, and so that's to me, that's in my opinion, that's our number one project because I feel like that gives us a funding source for a really critically needed area over there. And the other project is just something that I think needs to happen at some point, but I don't feel we would get as much support. And that's just like out right behind us, which is updating all the shelving behind us, like the shelving area and the seating area over here in this nonfiction area, because the shelving is very high for the lighting here because we have very low ceiling. So to have something in here that's with the high shelving next to the low lights, it makes it even harder to kind of see in that area. And the city has been updating all of this lightings to LED over the past 2 years, but it's still pretty dark in this area. So like if we were to update some of the shelving, but it's not as much of a direct impact, and I don't think it would be as much of a gain.
As exciting too.
Yeah, I don't think it would be as exciting. I really feel, in my opinion, that the teen one gives us the impact for the youth and the teen that come here after school. It gives us the ability to have quotes from teens that say like, Andrea already actually has quotes from teens specifically about this. We have our teen advisory board. So it to me, it's a project. And as you mentioned, one of the things that they often look for also is the number of youth supporters too. So if this was like, if we could actually go out, they provide additional from the community foundation, like I don't know if it's a award or what, but they highlight the ones that also have like a number of youth supporting a project like that. So I don't know if any other staff have other kind of thoughts or input on that.
Yeah, I mean, just backing up the teen one, just because, our teen librarian, Andrea, has been working really hard on engaging the teens, and she's great connecting with them. Like they feel really comfortable with her they feel comfortable enough with her to share that they want a better teen space. So that's feedback directly that we're also getting from teens that are, you know, that are already supporting the library, but also enjoy the library, but would really enjoy having a better space. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth us investing time into that demographic, because usually teens usually end up being kind of the ones that are not as focused on in libraries. So yeah, no, I am fully in support of that. But I mean, and with that, it could be a combination of the space, but also the services and programs. There's a lot of, you know, potential sort of projects that can come up with that.
So wouldn't you have to show how changes in the space will affect in a positive way the
Yeah.
programs that are offered to in this case, the population of teens?
Yeah,
I mean, you couldn't just say, hey, give us a bunch of money, we're gonna do programs,
no, yeah,
or we're gonna, you know, restructure the space.
yeah,
It seems like one would have to be supportive of the other.
yeah, for sure.
So a presentation of that would show that maybe it's not exactly bricks and mortar, but the paste and sheet rock would be supportive of expanding beneficial programs for the kids.
Well, I will say that you're self-reporting often in terms of like what your past product does, what did you use it on? There is no like post-reporting requirement in the similar like that you would on a grant. Like if we have a California State Library grant of the space, and they haven't had any because they've been reduced funding from IMLS. But a state library grant or a federal grant would generally say, what program are you holding? What's the attendees? What are you spending? You know, like all of this stuff. MC Gives is essentially like this, like we said, for like last year was general operating support. So it was funding that was support for the library. So we could use it for materials, we could use it for programs, we could use it for furniture, and it was used for all of it. So that was part of it. It was used for like makerspace equipment. It could be used for everything. There wasn't that same level of performance that said like we had, you know, X number of things, because we used it for multiple kind of purposes.
And was that tagged in, I mean, do you track those funds that, I mean, when you do an improvement or anything like that, do you say, okay, this is coming out of our MC Gives money?
So right now what we're doing, we've budgeted in is what's called like special projects fund. So there's a special projects fund, the fund goes like 4285
Right.
in our budget. So we've put the funds in there
Okay.
so that we know that the funds are gonna go out.
So if they asked, or if donors asked, so where did my money go last year?
Right,
You have that
yeah, and
general list.
right, and I'll say one of the projects that happens often is that we find is that like we're also not spending all of that in one single year, right? Like, you know, if we get like children's funds and then we get a lot of money,
Or
That's-
one single big thing.
right? We're spending the MC Gives funds, you know, we're continuing to spend it. We are spending it, but we're spending it out of the.
There's not use it or lose it by the end of the year, huh?
No, it's a check. We receive a check for it and then the donors, but it's like something that we want to make sure that we are spending
Yeah.
for that purpose. So we put it in, we're putting in a special projects budget. And yeah, I don't know if any
Does
other,
anyone have anything on those ideas or any others?
So when you plan, you get the teen advisory council as part of the group that plans what will happen.
I think that would be ideal. I've been like, I think what we'll need to do is have like a general idea. I think the plan is that I'd like to really present to the MPLFF, the Friends and Foundation, and say, this is what we are supportive of. We really think this is our project for this year, that we would, you know, get the buy-in. And so, because they are ultimately going to apply, right? They're ultimately going to put in the application because it goes through them. But if we can have them apply and then us be on board, as yes, when we get, you know, when we start planning with it, because I think it would be good for Andrea's team to sit down with us and actually look in that space, you know, go through different furniture, go through different setups. What do you actually guys want in here? And then it becomes part of their kind of their planning team you know, and then their planning team kind of looks into it, and then we come back and we'd have a good number, you know, we'd have a good number of what we could do with that funding.
It'd be nice to emphasize to some degree the how this would promote and stimulate involvement by the actual future users of the space, the teens.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, you know, adults are gonna sit around and spend the money and decide what chairs and everything to get and what programs, but that it'll, and then that could be a learning experience for the teens that are involved too, to be part of the planning and discussing and, you know, approving or disapproving. I mean, if I were at the, you know, making the judgment as to who gets money, and I saw that, I would be much more inclined to like the idea than if it were just, well, if you give it this money, we'll have a nicer place for them. And you have that council already set up.
And they do have opinions.
Yeah.
Love that.
Great.
Well, good. I think we support the idea of notion one.
Do we have any, there's any public comments? This is your time to raise your Zoom hand. Yeah,
Right
this, no,
You just leave it
Okay.
there.
we don't have any.
Yeah, sorry, the other one.
Oh, there's,
There is one.
okay. Yeah. All right, we have, Nelson, you can talk.
I put this in the Q&A, but I wondered if there's a way to invite proposals from teens in local schools so that you're reaching beyond your board of teens who are already involved, and perhaps involving other school age students in Monterey.
Thank you, Nelson. Appreciate the comment.
I think that's great. Okay, well, thank you. Then I think we do now move on to the consent agenda. And what we have there are items 3 through 6, which is the minutes from last time. Brian's activity report, the statistical report, and the financial report. Is there anything there that anybody wants to pull for discussion? If not, we would look for a motion
I
to,
just have a question.
oh,
As we read through these kinds of things, does anybody care if you find a typo or a misspelling or anything like that?
send it.
I think it's just say to clarify, I think you just make a clarifying comment before pulling it. If you could just make a clarifying comment.
Yeah, there's no reason to pull it. I just, in line 4 of the May 28th minutes, it starts out and it says advisory board, reading buddies, NCIP proposal advocacy, and then it says teen longs.
Oh, should be teen lounge.
Yeah, I mean, it's no big deal. It just,
Okay. We can make that change.
Okay, then I guess what we would be looking for is a motion to approve with that modification.
I'll move.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank
Is there
you,
any-
Marcia.
Is there any public comments related to the items on the consent agenda? And these are items 3 through 6.
Looks like no. Okay, then we would be moving to general public comment in case there is anything that has to do with items that are not on the agenda.
If there's any items anyone wants to speak on, there are items that are not on the agenda. This is your time. Please raise your Zoom hand. Okay. All right, I don't see anybody raising their Zoom hand. We can move to,
Okay. Then we would move to the second reading and adoption of changes to library board policy 120. Library card regulations and fee schedule. And we did look at this, first reading last month and just had a couple minor grammatical type of things, right?
right. There was the one that came through that was a from trustee Silvera, where she noted the, on 120 under, this is on page 20 of your packet,
20?
page 20, yes. Was the proposed edits are on there, those where you'll see the red lines and the yellows on there. And that was different from last one, was the identification is required rather than identification and address verification are required. So that was under 120 free library cards, B replacement cards, that was to be consistent with the other, just all of the other sections. So the replacement cards would be consistent with getting a brand new card. So that was just the one that we kept in there. But everything else is the same as it was in the past meeting, as identified when trustee Silvera noted that in the last. So all of these changes besides that are consistent with what was presented on paper. That change right there was discussed in the last meeting. So happy to answer any questions regarding.
I have a question. I think maybe I asked last time and I don't remember what the answer was. Where it says identification is required, what's somebody supposed to do to identify themselves?
Like a school ID, picture ID, something that's a, an issued card of identification card. So we often get,
That does show residence?
well, no, doesn't have to show residence. We get quite a few people coming from out of state that are coming here through the military.
Yeah,
So they will get government issued military IDs and military spouse IDs, and then we get passports. We would get international passports because we actually have a lot of students coming through Middlebury as well. There were a lot of international students. So we get passports, California driver's license, other state driver's license, school IDs, as I mentioned, coming through the schools, and some of those are on their phones too.
but you say it doesn't have to have the address.
Right.
Does it not have to have an image either? Because if I join, become a member of a museum, and so I have an ID card now, it says Bob Petty's member of XYZ Museum. It doesn't have my address or phone number or picture or anything. How do you know who, if I'm showing my card or the guy down the street who joined the local museum? I don't know.
That would be under more of the procedural. That would be under the procedural, which goes under the authority, which is under terms of the, I think in terms of the applications of this, because that falls into kind of what's, applicable when we have this is the policy, but the procedures of what is actually considered an identification card would be more under that. And so that's where we look at, if I have a Costco card, is that an identification card? It's,
Well, I have my picture on my Costco card.
right, but it's not a government issued
No.
identification card or a school issued. It's not something that's official kind of
Authority.
document. It's not an official document. So this is where more of like, in my opinion, like the authority under that is where we have a lot of times we have these policies, but then the procedures of implementing the policy, we adapt those through through our local procedures and our procedure manual, which trains the staff on the appropriate documents.
And,
think
and the
some of this
photo
is-
ID, and the photo ID is something that the staff were keeping. Yeah, that's something we're asking.
Part of this whole thing is to get consistent with the other libraries.
Mhm.
What do they require for
They're-
just identification if it's not address?
Well, PG Library does use a Costco card, so they actually do allow that. They basically allow it has to be a photo ID, but any type of photo ID. So
Yeah.
even if it's like Costco ID, or if it's like a Disneyland annual pass or something, and it has their picture on it.
Malibu Grand Prix
Yeah.
license.
Yeah, the boardwalk, I don't know. That's for Pacific Grove. So,
Yeah,
but for us, the staff felt more comfortable with it being more of a official kind of ID, like Brian mentioned. But yeah, that's something that the reason why we did make these changes is because we were we had a little bit more barriers, for library card access. And
so you still
those
have
libraries.
the task in front of you to, I did, pardon the pun, identify what identification is.
yeah, I mean, no, I think we have a pretty solid, understanding amongst the staff that it would be a photo ID that's government issued or school issued. I mean, if there's a strange case by case, that's kind of when we would refer to Brian's judgment, myself, but yeah, there is a general consistent understanding within the staff that they would be looking at government issued.
If a 17-year-old high school kid wants a library card, and
Yeah,
maybe they don't have a driver's license yet or something, what do we possibly expect of them?
well, they usually get a
Yes,
school
go have a
ID.
student ID.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, school ID.
And that has a picture on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, now it's on their phone, so they just show, you know. But yeah, we talked about that. Again, that would be a case by case kind of basis. So,
Uh-huh.
I mean, yeah, we did talk about the need for, anybody under 18, like we would want to ensure they could still get a card. So, yeah,
Because I could think of situations where the teen might want a card, but the parents haven't been and aren't interested in their own cards.
yeah,
So mom and dad aren't getting a card, but
Yeah.
the
definitely.
kid wants one.
Yeah. And we would definitely want them to get one. So,
Absolutely, yeah, that's why I was thinking.
yeah, but no, most students, I mean, they do get issued IDs from schools.
Is
so-
that right? Okay, with a picture on it, huh?
Mhm. Yeah.
Can't remember.
Well, and this policy is, bottom line is about, changing the fee for out of state. I mean,
Well,
isn't
there
that,
was the two big changes, which is
bottom
the
line?
fee, yeah, the fee and then the removal of the address verification.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so the
Okay.
out of state fee it was $10 and is
Yeah.
now at 25, yeah. So.
Okay. And is there anything we do about this or just accept the
Um,
second, just
we
hear the
would-
second reading?
We will second reading, we would adopt it, so we would first ask if there's any public comment
Yeah.
regarding this item before we go for
Do you
adoption.
need a motion to approve it?
Well, if we're changing it, we need to approve the change.
Before we do that,
This is the second.
what do the other libraries charge?
Other libraries charge, they don't. So I believe Carmel does not charge for out of state. They have a lot of, honestly, they have a lot of out of state residents too, that are in there. And Pacific Road, do they allow it?
Yeah.
They do allow,
They
but they
do.
don't charge.
You don't charge.
And this was something that the fee schedule on this was part of the going through where the city was updating the master fee schedule to match the time it takes to do something. So if we're looking at this as saying, okay, it takes X number of minutes to do this, to process the thing, this is how much staff time it costs. So that's where the fee came in here because we already had the fees. So that increased the fee based on the city's recent updates to master fee schedule.
And we
So-
probably have some information on our card holders as compared to the other two libraries. We're by far a bigger library, right?
We-
So with more,
But actually, it comes up
Bureaucracy.
very infrequently
Yeah,
that somebody is from out of state and they're
Okay.
looking for a library card. A lot of people are living here temporarily, which is something we can accommodate because they can use the address. If they're here for like 2 months, they can use their address here.
okay,
yeah, and so this is a very, the number here from the 25, this is like happening, what, 3, 4, 5 times a year.
And it's a monthly fee. The $10 is a monthly fee, so I assume the
Right.
25 is too.
Right, it's for 1 month. So this is very, very rarely. And one thing I will add on this, because our e-resources, we're limited compared to other libraries throughout the state that have a lot of e-resources. There are a lot of libraries, large library systems that do not allow non-state users to use their library because what they don't want is people to get a library card from outside the state. And then they're
suck
queued in,
up all those resources.
soak up all the electronic resources, because that's what they're often getting. If you don't live here, and like Kim says, if somebody's here as a family who's here for 2 months, yes, we'll put, the card where we can
Yeah.
accommodate them because they're staying here for
Yeah.
2 months.
But if they're just visiting for the weekend on vacation,
They're not typically getting
we're
card for
not gonna be
books.
using our ongoing services.
They're gonna get access to online resources, and then that, you're paying, that's the kind of the cost, in my opinion too, is that basically that person California State Library helps us like universal card. That's why everyone allows a card holder in the state of California. And people here from the Monterey Peninsula come here, visit their taxpayers, all of those things. That's why it's, you know, for us, those cards are all free. They're paying into it. If they're outside the state, they're not paying into the California State Library. They're not paying into these other fees. So that's why I feel it's,
We're getting the benefit.
they're getting the benefit if they got a card from outside the system, outside, traveled here, then got queued up into our e-resources, and then our e-resources, which are already limited, get an even longer wait list. That's what I would be concerned about.
So I'm trying to understand the motivation for the charge. This came from the city wants us to do this?
Well, we already had a charge of $10.
That's the problem, because
We-
we already had a charge. Because I know we eliminated the fines, and that,
But we didn't eliminate things like late fines for laptops, telescopes, some of those kind of very specific.
But for books,
But for books and DVDs, we don't. So for these, what it is, the fee-based library cards, in my opinion, is that because, you know, the California State Library, and, you know, we're on part of a ebook consortium of different libraries throughout the state that pay in. We share catalog, we share resources,
that's
Palace
the
Project,
Libby.
Libby, Palace. We're sharing resources with other libraries. Everyone's paying into it through the state. So we have this universal borrowing system. So that's free, and that's why we allow free cards for it. Outside the state, those people are not
Supporting that.
not supporting the state funding. And so if we're charging $25 a month, it is a limitation on number of people from outside the state that live outside the state to use our system. But it's more that we're charging them for the ability to access the ebooks, access e-resources, you know, some of those things. So that's where
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the logic for, say, Carmel, which has a tremendous number of people from, say, Texas who come here for the summer.
I will say Carmel, like from what I understand, their e-resources and some of those things, the fees are charged based on your actual population count. So e-resources, if you are in Carmel and your population is 2,500 people,
You know,
the electronic resources are actually charged, and the vendor charges us as the client
yeah.
based on our population. And so if they're charging based on population and 2,500 versus 30,000,
so that's
we're-
resident population, doesn't include the people who come to the summer.
Exactly.
People who stay here for 182 days a year, but not 183.
right, we would,
Don't pay taxes in California because they pay taxes.
those people still have like mailing addresses, and then we would say that they would live here, those people in Carmel that are here like half the time, or, you know,
Oh,
I would
see. So
say,
they're considered California residents, even though they pay no taxes in California.
not,
They
well, they're
real
paying
estate
property
tax.
tax, they're paying property tax, and they're paying into, you know, some of those other things, but I mean, like, for them, that's up to a Carmel decision on there. Those people would probably give us their PO box in Carmel, or, you know, something like that.
Right.
But I'm just saying like those, and that fee in there of, you know, Carmel as a smaller system, when they got we're getting a lot of people applying for library cards remote, when during the COVID time, when people were doing remote cards, that actually, you know, limits a lot of your, I mean, Hoopla and a lot of these other services that they had to end up cutting, because there's so many people, they
Right.
come in, they get a card, they want to use those resources, and they're charged per use. Those charged per use, where other ones are charged as per capita. And if you're charged per your capita of 22,000, 2,500, that rate's a lot different. So that's just where I think we come in, is that, you know, we want to make it, still allow it. I think it's still fine to allow it. I feel like the fee is reflective of, you know, having people pay into the electronic resources, help pay us into the other services that are here for the library.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, then I guess we would be asking
Asking
for
for,
public comment first.
yeah, is there any public comment related to this item on the policy 120? Please raise your Zoom hand. There are no public comment. With that, we'd ask for a motion.
Okay. Looking for a motion to adopt. Okay, Janie, a second?
Second,
Thank you, Bob. Okay,
And when we get a, we can vote, oh, we don't need a roll call vote, but all in favor?
aye.
All right, thank
So
you.
we are approving revisions to the board policy 120. According to the
So
agenda.
revised and effective date are gonna.
Will be updated, we'll put it up on the,
Okay.
website as well.
okay. Then we would be moving on to approving the timeline and process for the annual evaluation of library director. Which is in the agenda.
That's page 22,
Item
23,
eight.
24.
Why are we starting so late?
We are, the look back period is based on the date of hire, which is August 16th.
Mhm.
But we do have a lag so that, we have, Janie is leaving us. We'll have a new trustee who will not be participating, having had no prior experience. So it's going to be very important that we have all four of us here. The four of us that will remain, and Marcia will be on a trip.
I apologize. but I have to be out of
Yeah.
town
And so we need to,
October 8th.
and that's why we're
Until
looking at
October
these
8th.
dates. And we did,
It was not clear from
right,
just
well,
why it was being pushed up so much.
I did run it by HR and they were fine with, they wanted the surveys and the evaluation to apply to the 365-day period that ends in August, but they were fine with us, taking a little gap there until we could all be present to
Yeah,
analyze what.
so
came back.
regardless of what's scheduled for September and October, the review period is August to August.
Right. Right. So, so one of the biggest question is availability for, the two closed sessions when we meet. One is our regular,
Yeah,
meeting time, so that should not be a problem. We should all be, present for October 22nd anyway, because that's when
Yeah.
we would normally meet. The October 30th, one is up for discussion to make sure that everybody, before we finalize that, we need to make sure that everyone can commit to it.
As long as it's not on Halloween. we'll be okay.
Right.
Halloween Eve.
Um,
So that's the 30th,
that's
that's a
the
Friday
30th.
night.
I thought it was a Thursday.
No.
Is it? It's a Friday?
Just like last time, you're looking at last year's.
Oh, I
calendar,
know,
remember?
I did do that.
2026 already. I have October 30th on
I
Friday.
have. You sure do.
All right.
So, and is that all right?
Let me check.
Depends what time of the
Give me a
day.
moment.
It doesn't matter to me
Well,
what
and we
day.
can, okay, and we can set the date and the time.
Unless you want to make it a week later, I mean, a week after, we can make it the Thursday, just to keep Thursday after our 22nd meeting, make it the 29th.
I can't do it for now.
Oh,
Yes, are we okay with the 30th?
during the day?
Right. And I don't know what time of day we want to do it. This is when we would be reviewing with Brian. So we've already done our work. He's already seen
Yeah.
it and we would be running through, and that meeting does take. We do usually spend at least an hour and a half on it, I think. So we could,
Well, since it's going to be attended by you, Brian, do you have any issue with Friday afternoon, the 30th of October? At least at this point?
At this point, I think the only, as long as it's like, 4 o'clock, kind of similar time, I think is good. We're, possibly we're looking at doing a potential museum event that evening.
oh,
Well, we
okay.
should
So
start a
would-
little earlier
Yeah,
than
would you
4.
prefer
yeah.
earlier?
And you could go celebrate afterwards.
So maybe
No, it's
three, could we do it at three?
Yeah.
I don't know what time you're planning for that event.
Probably later in the.
That would just give us plenty of time before the.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll, yeah.
Non-automated announcement that ding, the library's gonna close in
Mhm.
17 and a half minutes or something.
Or
But
even
you're,
earlier than that. or
Yeah, fine with me.
One of the afternoon.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
After
better
lunch,
because
that'd be
if you have to set up for an event, maybe just,
Oh, well, I typically pick up Derek at school too, so I can,
so 1
What,
o'clock is better?
Which
yeah,
is better.
actually, you can call the time. I think we're all
okay.
flexible.
I would just say let's not start any later than 3 or 3:30.
Right.
Yeah, let me just verify.
Earlier.
Sorry, I'm just looking at that. um, Just looking at this, sorry, I'm just looking at the. Friday. Let's see. And school is generally dismissed at 3:10. So on Friday, so I could either do, like, if we did, I feel like if we did 1 o'clock,
1 o'clock.
that would
Oh,
be,
finish before you go picking up instead
Yeah.
of starting
Okay.
afterwards.
yeah, that would
Yeah,
give.
late morning is okay with me also.
Yep.
If you prefer late morning, that's fine.
Yeah, I think,
10 o'clock.
let's make sure, I think it's also, yeah, this, I think, yeah, 10 o'clock is also fine. I don't know if trustees have a preference for morning or afternoon, but
Yeah,
I think 10 a.m. is fine for me.
Just to get done then.
okay, you prefer 10?
I do.
Okay,
All right,
Let's
I'm
call
fine
it-
with 10 a.m. Yeah.
Is that
okay.
okay for you?
All right, that's the last time I'm crossing it out. Yeah, yeah, 10 o'clock is fine.
Yeah, and it's closed, yeah. The
Yeah.
one on the 22nd is gonna be
Right.
closed.
Okay.
One thing,
Want to make sure you're not gonna be swimming with the sharks at 10 o'clock.
No, it's remember the sharks at sunrise.
Oh,
So
sunrise,
10 a.m.
geez.
on the
one of
30th.
the things that Bob mentioned was that the spread between when we're going to be looking at this and our look back period, which ends in the middle of August. Do we want to try and get well, we would be able to get the packets to the trustees earlier. If there's a preference for that, or do we feel like
What
are
would be
able to-
packet meeting?
well, we send the results of the surveys and ask for, and
Yeah,
Brian's
yeah.
self-evaluation, and then ask for the trustees to,
And right now it's
Complete
scheduled for
it.
October 15th, and you're saying we should do it earlier?
well, I'm asking if you want to or need to, because the evaluation period is,
Actually, it's the 8th,
Yeah.
when you see that.
if nobody cares, I'd like to leave it, but okay.
But about the packets. This has come up before. We were sent separate comments from the actual statistics and they collected as one unit and I want to have that correlation. So I would prefer to have the raw data also rather than have the comments stripped out and put in a bundle by themselves.
Okay, because last year they did full-time and part-time separately, is that what you're talking about?
No. They pull the comments out from the data. And
So you want like an image of.
I want, exactly.
one.
Okay,
He wants the raw data.
Well, we get the numbers, but you're saying the numbers and the words were
That-
separated,
Uh-huh.
and you want them combined together, the
I
words.
see it as they were entered.
Well, the comments were a separate item. I
Per-
mean,
pertain to the
yeah,
question.
so it went, number one, da, 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 and number two is, do you have comments about this?
Right,
So, I mean, it was a little weird, but
So questions 1 and 2 were really relating to the same.
Yeah.
Issue, let's call it, or same aspect of
Yeah,
the
so,
evaluation.
I don't know, that was something to do with the way they
Because we
Their
are talking
system
about the
was, yeah,
HR.
yeah.
So they probably have a standard
No,
way they
because
do it.
when I was the chair, after that data came and I said, can we not have that? She sent it to me.
Yeah,
So if it was not an
Okay.
issue, then there
And
should
and you
be,
sent it to everybody
I
else.
did. So if it's
Okay.
not an issue 3 years ago, whatever it was, what was it? It
Okay,
shouldn't be
Now,
now.
let's just ask them if they can do
The
it.
main thing is to have the names removed.
right.
yeah, it is.
It makes it anonymous. Other than that,
They're on the name.
Yeah, it's just a matter of organizing the two types of data
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
in mini bundles that they, or pairings, I guess I should say.
Okay,
Sure, we want to do that.
sure. I can ask you that.
That. And the HR people are the same as
It is,
before.
yes, I've already been in touch with
Okay,
MK, so
good.
she's, yeah.
Yeah,
She's
she was-
all
she
over
was
it, yeah. Well, good. Okay, is there anything else about
So
that?
we're picking 10 o'clock on the 30th for
Yes,
that meeting.
right. And then the meeting when we do our work of finalizing a draft would be
22nd, isn't it?
the 22nd.
Yeah.
At 4 o'clock, like our regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah, and we just make the agenda
So
minimal.
already on your calendars.
Yeah, so we don't like take up all the time we have today discussing stuff on an agenda. We
Right,
eliminate
it
all
would
those
only,
possible.
yeah, that's all we would be talking about.
Okay.
Okay, well then I think, and there's nothing to approve or move on, so anything else? Questions
Oh, for this project?
about this? Yeah.
Not sure what's it called. It says we are supposed to approve it. So we need to vote.
Oh, we do, approved timeline and process, okay.
Yeah.
And if we see if there's any public comment related to this agenda topic, please raise your Zoom hand. There are no public comments.
Okay,
So we can have a motion.
then we'd be looking for a motion to, okay, Marcia
and I'll second
moves and Bob seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay, all right, well, thank you. That takes care of most of our business, so we would be moving on to trustee comments. Anybody have anything?
Marcia.
I wanna thank Janie for her service for.
That's right. Is this your last?
Yeah.
You are most welcome.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To say what a pleasure it has been.
Pleasure and an honor. Get to know you and to work together.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much. It was a very interesting and rewarding experience for me. I learned a lot.
How long were you on the board? Sorry, how long were you a trustee?
For
For 4 years? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anybody else?
Oh, anybody else want?
Talking
about Janie?
Comment?
Public comments.
No.
Or no, sorry, trustee comments. Yeah, trustee comments. Any other
Nope.
trustee comments?
Okay, I was going to comment on how great the teen interns have been with the summer reading project. It's been so great to see them in there every day, and I know that has something to do with their requirements, right? Are they, okay, so something I noticed in the statistics was that our library card holders using the patron app is actually down, and it's also a teensy tiny percentage of the total circulation. And so I was wondering if maybe they could do like a little coaching, extend after
Yeah.
summer reading, and maybe do a week or two of signing people up and helping them put the app on their phones and show them how to use it.
Yeah.
If that would be something, because it's actually down 31%, and it was only like 400 or 500 items checked out compared to like 8,000 through the self-check. So, I mean, it's like, doesn't even register. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that the machine is actually faster than the app.
Oh, okay.
Because the app, it does use, it's a camera checkout, so it scans each item individually, then cycles. And the self-checkout, you can stack your items.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
So it's,
Okay.
but I will say, the app, I'm pretty sure that actually the one thing, and I can talk with Melissa and Kim and, Andrea is, when they film a video, because oftentimes their teams are also filming like social media content. So I find updating a video on the app, I think would, like using the app might be a good way for them to do that too. Just for us to update that content, like on the webs, like on our, we could do some more on that to help train people on using that resource, but you could actually use it at Pacific Grove and Carmel. Because we're all in
I
co-op.
did not know
Yeah.
that. Okay.
So it's a way for us to kind of like having a flyer, maybe update some of our flyer information on some of that too. Because we need more better, we update and how people do it, but I think, you need to get new people to use it to add it on there.
Yeah, and I would say to add a little bit about what it does, but what it doesn't do, because like
Right, yeah,
Frank
you
was
can't-
upset
yeah,
because I can't look up in the catalog and see what it has.
well, one thing that's weird, since we're talking about catalogs and systems and everything. Not infrequently, I'll get a text that says, you have a book due on a certain day, and this book is not available for renewal. Basically saying, so get it back to us. When I go on my account on Koha, I guess it is, it not only says that the book is available for me to renew, it says it's gonna be auto-renewed. And to me, there's a conflict there. And one's telling me, no way, return it by the due date, and the other one's saying, there are 3 renewals left, Bob, help yourself.
Yeah.
And it also says it's gonna be auto-renewed if you forget,
Yeah,
basically.
there's some message that
Yeah,
shouldn't be in there.
So something is,
So to get
and
that
I
right
asked David, and he said the latter that's on Koha is the correct one. That if it says you have 2 or 3 or whatever renewals available, or that it's going to be auto-renewed, that's accurate. It's the other thing that says, no way, you gotta get it in by the due date, that is somehow being sent out, and he said it's 2 different systems.
Yes.
And
email.
I guess I would just bring that to whoever's attention, that could be confusing to somebody that checks there.
Is it possible that you get the message and whoever had put a hold on it cancels it, so then you look in Koha and there's nothing? Is that a possibility?
But I didn't follow that,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You get the email or message, whatever,
It's attached and it says you gotta return it.
and between the time you get the
Oh,
text and you
me
look,
checking my account,
somebody has
withdrawn a hold. Well, it'd have to happen like within 30 seconds.
They come up
So-
In
simultaneously.
fact, I wondered if that was the case. But, yeah,
I think that's something for us to we can look into
Yeah.
behind the scenes, because it could be regarding the standardized language that would go out on the text. Because there are certain things, like the same way on our email notifications. There's
Mhm.
standard lines of text that you put on there in terms of there, and then there's the other stuff that comes in when it codes and it figures out and it's communicating with the system. So we would have to see on there what's communicating with it, but yes, it's a third-party service that you register for the SMS text message service, you register for that service. Not everybody gets it, signs it, and then it sends it out, so we would have to investigate that. And
Okay.
Melissa,
Yeah, I can talk to David about
we
it.
can
Yeah.
follow up with that.
Okay, then we'd be looking for if there is library director comment.
Yeah, so I would just highlight, trustee Petty asked that I pass out flyers regarding the Pride events happening on Sunday and Monday. So if you guys want to grab one of each and pass them over for any attendees in here, as well as any All the trustees. So those are happening Sunday, register online. And or Monday, the registration is still open on the LibCals for these events.
Okay, so there is still space.
There's
for
still
both?
space.
Both of them are on the events page.
They're both on the events page, yep. I'll also.
Not on the calendar though.
No,
We didn't have them finalized by that time.
we were ahead of those, so.
So we've got, those were just kind of like finalized recently. We, want to highlight that I just got word that I got $100,000 grant for the museum for necessary work where we have the Monterey mural, which is the granito mural, which is on the back of the Monterey Conference Center, which is having, the tile was coming off.
Right.
And we needed funding to help remove the tile as well as do reinstallation. So I applied for a community foundation grant, just got word about an hour ago, they got 50,000 towards the removal,
Yeah.
50,000 towards installation.
Awesome.
Yay.
And that was really great because we had a gap in terms of the funding needed for all of the removing and care and all of that. So this is great.
It's wonderful. I'm sorry, who did it come from?
Community Foundation, Monterey County.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that funding for them, it's a 2-year grant. So 1 year, first year is regarding removal, second year is regarding is towards installation on the project. So
Wonderful.
very good because, you know, this is hard to find funding for art projects and things like that for this scale.
Yeah.
So,
So are we putting the same tiles back after they're cleaned and polished and
yeah,
ready? So
It'll
the
come
picture's
all the
gonna
way
be the
down?
same.
I'll have to take it all the way down.
Wow.
It's a wonderful.
Yeah, it really is. That's what I was
Yeah.
wanting to ask. So the picture will be the same.
The picture will be the same.
Yes.
One of the pieces that I did put in there was fund a signage that actually says, that talks about
Yeah.
the give
history.
more information on the mural, says it was partially funded by Community Foundation, you know, and then
Yes.
having information how people can learn more about the mural.
Oh, a sign in front of a piece of art. Boy, you're really asking for confusion.
Sign it, going back to our.
Yeah, which is it?
But no, but a sign, like we have these interpretive signs on different things. So there is a sign off to the left too, which has like who were to the original. So all of that. And then on, want to highlight July 1st, we're going to have a 4 o'clock over at Colton Hall or on 4th of July.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be Colton Hall flag. So if you saw,
Oh, I see that.
there was on
Yeah.
KSPW, and then they'll have it come out on the weekly. We'll have an article about the flags on July 2nd, I believe, because they're doing it for the 4th of July issue. But we have some historic flags, and also just there's a few historic flags that we have on display, as well as the information about what flags have flown in Monterey. So replicas, but it's just a way to get people inside of Colton Hall. The large flag that's on display is about 8 foot by 12 foot from John C. Fremont. There's
That's the
a,
one spread on the table.
and then there's a flag that's from 1850 from California becoming the 31st state. And then there's a flag that's from Mexico, from Alta California, from between 1823 to 1846. And then the last original one we have is the small piece of the last Mexican flag to fly in California and under Mexican occupation. And then we have the drawing of the California bear flag.
Are none of those flags in good enough condition to raise on a pole?
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yes, none of them are.
I would say the California flag it was one that was done for a decoration at that time.
Yeah.
It was not built as an actual flag.
Uh,
The Mexican flag is a long and skinny flag that most likely hung in an office and didn't hang on a pole. It would have been inside, like above, probably inside of a municipal building or like a government building. And the other one, the 8 by 12 foot flag,
yeah.
extremely fragile.
Is it?
It's from probably made in about 1843 to 1845. That's when it was
Mhm.
actually made. So this thing is huge and filled with patches and actually hand sewn and then hand sewn onto a liner.
So
So,
are you gonna be open on the 4th itself?
so on July 4th, when people are there, if you're there visiting on July 4th, go inside and just see a piece of California history.
So the library's still closed on the 4th, but the museum will be open.
Museum is open. By code, Colton Hall is open, I believe, 362 days a year. So they're typically not open Christmas, Thanksgiving. one other day.
The Pride events, again, aren't just show up and take a seat.
No.
They have to be pre-registered.
Or registered, yeah, in there.
Is that the way was that the attendance procedure we used a year ago when we had the event
Yeah.
over on
Yeah.
Cannery Row?
I
Pre-registration.
mean, yeah, I mean, if you show up and you look legit, we'll talk to you and let you know.
If there's space. Yeah.
But
You have to make sure there's space.
we are asking people to pre-register.
So, give me a list of the changes I need to make to look.
Legit.
Yeah.
No, you-
It's
We
not possible, but.
No, impossible dream, right?
I'll say, you know, we often, depending on the events, like a lot, we're trying to manage our space and our attendees on a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And we've run into that with space issues on a lot of our different programs this summer. So we
Like
have
hitting the cap.
hitting the cap, we've been
Like-
hitting the cap on a lot of programs, and so we want to make sure that we
Good
are,
problem to have.
You don't have people coming and not being able to get in.
Yeah.
So on Sunday, the drag queen, is that gonna be in the community room?
yes.
And, cause the other one says community room on it.
Yeah.
this one
They'll
doesn't.
both be in the community room.
Okay,
But they will, since the library is not open to the public, because
That's
it's not
right.
our normal open hours, we'll have somebody at the door letting people through, yeah.
yeah, cause I was just gonna say the library is closed at
Yeah.
11 o'clock on Sundays usually.
Mhm.
It's also closed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, on Monday mornings it's closed too, for that matter.
So everybody who's there will be
Okay.
celebrating Pride. And if you don't want to be celebrating Pride, you don't have to come.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I think that
Closing
wraps it up
comments.
and we will adjourn the meeting, but please stay where you are because we have.
Okay.
Double.
Thank you.
That's sweet.
Now,